Welcome to 100% Alive, the show where you overcome your fears, your frustrations, and your failures to do what you never thought possible. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and I'm your host. Action. That's right. Living 100% alive puts you as the movie maker. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and welcome back to 100% Alive. I'm finding a whole new joy in making movies. You know, it's something I never imagined growing up. Oh, maybe fantasized a little bit, but not really. And I did a little acting in high school and, you know, my tiny little high school and all, but never really imagined making movies. I also didn't recognize that we are the authors of our own story. We get to write our own story. And therefore, we create the movies out of our lives that we want to live. Let's think about that for a little bit. And you know, I made my first movie 2 years ago. Just a little short, 10 minutes. And the whole process was absolutely fascinating. I was introduced to some movie makers, just local movie makers, do a little bit on the side, but they got full-time jobs. I've been to different film festivals, and because of that, I'm actually starting my own film festival here in February of 2023. So the whole idea of making movies is something that I've come late in life to. But having studied rhetoric and deconstruction of stories in my PhD program, I've seen it from the other side. And now writing books, some of them fiction, well, not really fiction, some of them biographies, and some of them are going to be fiction, but a lot of business books. I realize that each one of us write our own story. By the choices we make, we decide whether the movie is going to be a tragedy or romance, a comedy or a satire. And it's the approach that we take in life. If we're leading a survivalist life, taking what life gives us, we're headed for tragedy. I've been that person. I've been around people like that. And they say, well, gotta be lucky. And I'm not lucky. You know what? I don't like that choice. And being a free thinker, not someone who is believe we're pushed into life and said, no, this is your lot in life. I don't really believe in fate. I believe that when we are connected to the ultimate power, which I call God, I believe the kingdom of heaven is within me, and I've got choices. I can always have choices. And then, as we've learned in a recent episode, that we can literally change our brains and the way we think, and that changes our perspective, and that changes our choices. So with that, we start to see, what story are we telling? In a later episode, we'll talk about the blame game and playing a victim. Okay, if we take that role, and we're going to talk about in the next episode, we're going to talk about roles that we play. This one's mainly about the movies. We get to choose what we're going to do. So if we're focusing on doubt, depression, and defeat, if we're focusing on fears, failures, and frustrations, what kind of movie are we going to tell? We're going to tell a tragedy. Let me ask you right here, right now. Are you living the life of a tragedy movie? Are you writing a tragedy movie with every decision you're making? Be honest. That's a tough challenge. I wish somebody would have asked me that. Because if we're going on looking for all the negative, then we are writing a tragedy. We are doing the screenwriting, and then we're taking it as a director and we're making it a tragedy. Instead, the difference between a tragedy and a romance is that in a romance, the hero overcomes the obstacles. Again, for the film critics or the literary critics, forgive me if I'm glossing over a lot of differences, but that's the essence of what we want to see is what are we creating? What is the theme of our movie? Is it winning or losing? Is it barely surviving based on all the outside obstacles? Or is it having a quest and living and succeeding in that quest? That becomes fascinating. So the challenge that we have, and we're not anywhere near that, but it's when we look and we go, okay, here we go, action. Look over here, action. We're the director. Okay, let me back up. We're the screenwriter, where we decide what movie we're telling. We decide it, we write it, and going through the whole writing process. I get that. But now, having studied screenwriting and directing, I'm starting to see the director is the keeper of the script. In a lot of ways, we honor the script, but the director also has choices in a lot of the blockbuster movies. They can change that script, they can rewrite the script. I'm going to make it a little more easy for us in this. I'm going to say the screenwriter, let's give them the rewrite possibilities. And then the director is going to come in and say, okay, here's how we're going to make this happen. Here's how we're going to bring it to life. And in the process, we make the movie. Now, one of the things I've found is the joy of being an amateur movie maker. And I'm going to start doing a whole lot more with these and ways to do it on practically a nickel. Ways to shoot your film without spending a ton of money. Otherwise, if you're going to go Hollywood, here's what happens. That's outside in living. You may get your film made if you write the screenplay, but it may not look like your screenplay at all when you're done with it. That's outside in living. Believe me, that's not what I want. If I'm writing a film, if I'm writing a script, it's because I want to tell a story. I want to make a point the way I want to make it. I'm not going to sell it. I don't care what Hollywood is going to pay me because I don't want to see them take it wherever they will. Not without heavy duty editing control on my part. And they're not going to like that because I know the way they operate. They buy the script, they buy the rights, and you just sit and watch. And I've heard of one too many that don't come out the way the writer wants. In fact, sometimes the writer has taken their name off the script because it's been so changed that they're not honored with it at all. So I want to be the screenwriter and I want to be the director. And I'll probably be the producer too because I'll fund it. Now, that's the way it works in our real life. We become the screenwriter, we become the director, and we become the producer who funds it. That's valuable. We also become the distributor. And what's valuable in that is we know the story we want to tell. We put the parts together. We assemble the cast. Naturally, we're playing ourselves, and we'll say which part. That's going to come in the next episode. And then we say, we're going to edit it. We're going to make it be what we want it to be. I mentioned it in another episode that we take ownership, but we also don't accept guilt that's not ours. We don't allow shame at all. I'm getting ahead of myself because I think that's when this following is, but that doesn't matter. Where we are right now is that we want to write the script based on being 100% alive. 100% alive. And then we want to direct that film. And the director not only does the casting and the editing, and bringing the right people together and getting the best out of 100% alive, but then they edit it. What do we do when we edit? Cut out the parts that don't matter. In our mind, we make mistakes. Okay. Do we have to talk about them all the time? Absolutely not. We own up to them when they're important, but beyond that, we let them go. And we tell the story the right way, the most powerful way. And whatever doesn't move that story forward, we get rid of. And then we distribute it, which is we share it. We tell people, hey, here's my story. But more importantly, here's how I can help you. Now, isn't that exciting when we start to get into that? And then imagine other people. Now, I've written a book on my parents about 10 years ago. I've written my own autobiography. I've written Heisman Trophy winners. I'm writing another one right now for a guy that we'll see in season 2, Aaron Burris, who's run 50 marathons, whose quest to run 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 weeks. I take a breath because there's more coming. The year he turned 50, 5 years after he'd been shot 5 times. Wow, what a quest. Okay. Screenwriter, director, editor, distributor, fundraiser, or the producer. We're it. We're telling our story. Are you telling a tragedy, or are you telling a romance? No, romance doesn't mean just a love story. Romance means like Aaron Burris running this. That's a romance. This is a quest. It's almost an epic quest because it goes far beyond just him. There's a whole element there of good versus bad and all kinds of things like that. It's like doing what we never thought possible. Are we willing to live that story? And when we live 100% alive, we start looking and say, okay, what story am I going to tell? What obstacles do I have to overcome? How do I overcome? And we write our script. We become the director. We edit out all that doesn't take us to the right place. And then we distribute it. We share it. Isn't that a fun idea? Doesn't it make you want to put your hat on backwards, grab the megaphone, say, action? I find that thrilling. I acted in my first movie. I've acted in my plays. But right now, yeah, we're all actors in our own lives. But an actor oftentimes says the lines that are given to him. I'd rather be the director. I'd rather be the screenwriter that writes the lines. I'd rather be the director that takes a charge and really shepherds the whole movie through and brings it out on the other end in a way that's fantastic story, compelling for everybody else to watch. 1 year from today, you know it's coming. 1 year from today, you've written your story, not literally. You've written your story in your mind. You're directing it. You're editing out the negative parts, everything else that's going forward. And now you're sharing it. Is it compelling? Are people giving you rave reviews? Imagine that. Because if you're living 100% alive, you're making a difference with those people who love you the best, with those people who are really supporting of you, who you've shared your pride and size with, and they're standing up and applauding. Wow. So with that, I am Lauren Murfield, and that's a take, and it's in the can, that episode of 100% Alive. Until next week. Thanks for joining our show. I'm Dr. Lauren Murfield, and until next week, remember, don't just survive. You were born to live 100% alive.